They fined me $425 for unauthorized lawn edging, even though the photo they used as evidence showed my neighbor's yard. That notice came on a Friday, day 187 since my wife passed, and I think that's when the quiet inside me snapped. Welcome to HOA Society. My name's David Lang, 51, small business accountant from Clearwater, Florida, and lately, accidental archivist of suburban insanity. If you care about fairness, or just hate bullies with clipboards, stick around. Tell me where you're watching from. I like knowing how far the ripples go. I bought the house 6 years ago, back when Amanda was alive. She loved the oak trees along the cul-de-sac, said they made the air taste honest. After her chemo bills, we'd promised to keep this place simple. Mortgage at 3.4% paid off by 60. Her last month, she whispered that she wanted me to keep the house green and open so kids could run barefoot the way ours never got to. I didn't think the word open would someday mean non-compliant to a committee of retirees with measuring sticks. The trouble started with a letter, no greeting, just bold caps. Notice of non-conforming vegetation, code 4.3b. Beneath it, a photo of grass trimmed too low and the threat of a $50 per day fine. I walked to the HOA office, a prefab building beside the tennis courts. The president, a man named Carl Morton, sat behind a cherry wood desk like he was auditioning for municipal royalty. He didn't look up when I entered. "You can appeal, Mr. Lang," he said, "but it's rarely successful." "I'd like to see the maintenance logs or the standard you're applying," I told him. He smiled without warmth. "The standard is consistency. Some folks think the rules don't apply to them." That word, some, hung in the air like a gnat. I walked out without another word, but I recorded the conversation legally. Florida's one-party consent. I'd checked before hitting the voice memo button. I wasn't planning revenge, I was planning evidence. Back home, I opened a folder on my desktop. HOA Docs, Amanda. It already had 23 files. Emails about mailbox colors, notices, late fee threats, all minor stuff. But this time felt different. The lawn warning was personal, almost taunting. That night, I walked the perimeter with a flashlight, snapping photos, noting timestamps, and realizing something odd. The neighbor's side, the one in their photo, showed identical edging. By Sunday, I'd measured every border. Their claim was off by nearly 2 inches. I filed a written dispute citing Section 2.4 of our covenants. All photographic evidence must clearly identify the parcel in question. 2 weeks later, they doubled the fine to $850. That was the moment I understood this wasn't about grass. It was about control. Monday morning, I sat with my friend and sometimes client, Ron Patel, a real estate attorney with ink-stained cuffs and a habit of sipping from a thermos that smelled like burnt hazelnut. "They're using selective enforcement," he said, flipping through my binder. Classic intimidation. Knowledge nugget number 1. Under Florida Statute HOA 720.305, an HOA must enforce rules uniformly. Selective enforcement voids the penalty and can trigger attorney fee reimbursement. Ron suggested we gather all board actions from the past year. Public record under community disclosure, he said. You just have to ask. So I did. I filed a certified letter requesting meeting minutes, financial statements, and enforcement logs from January 1st to July 31st. They had 10 business days to comply. On the 11th day, I got an envelope with no return address. Inside, a single sheet, denied, board privilege, no signature. That's when I knew I was dealing with people who believed their own bylaws outweighed state law. Carl started circling my property, in his golf cart, once at dawn, once near midnight. I logged the times. My camera caught him pointing at my security light and muttering into his phone. I kept my voice calm when I told Ron. "Let them dig their hole," he said. "We'll bring daylight later." And daylight, I discovered, comes from paper. Deeds, permits, audits, the silent light of bureaucracy. That week, I stopped grieving and started researching. I learned our HOA had filed its last annual report late, 3 times. Its registered agent address was outdated by 163 days. A small detail, but small details sink ships. Then I found the bigger leak. The parcel of land under the tennis courts, Parcel 12B, had reverted to county ownership after a developer's tax error 2 years ago. Yet the HOA kept collecting court maintenance fees of $14 per household per month. Multiply that by 114 homes in 12 months, and you get $19,152 in unauthorized fees. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. I printed the parcel deed, highlighted the lapse, and slid it into a folder labeled Leverage Confidential. The next morning, Carl sent another notice. Visible trash bins beyond 6 o'clock p.m. I checked the timestamp. 5:58 p.m. Petty war declared. Still, I breathed. I documented. I waited. Because if Amanda taught me anything, it's that patience can be sharper than anger. And when the cut finally lands, it leaves no blood, just silence. The silence broke 3 days later with a knock that rattled the screen door. Code enforcement, orange vest, clipboard. He said there'd been an anonymous complaint about unapproved lighting fixtures. I asked if the HOA filed it. He shrugged. They didn't sign the form, sir, but the handwriting looks familiar. I thanked him, took the citation, and slipped it into my binder under harassment log. Entry number 12. That night, I sat at the kitchen table beneath the one light Amanda had insisted we keep dim, said it made the house feel calm. My fingers tapped against the table's scarred edge. I thought about the sound of gravel when her hospice gurney left that driveway, and I realized maybe I wasn't fighting for peace anymore. Maybe I was fighting for the promise she made me keep, to protect the place where life still mattered. The next HOA meeting was open to members in good standing. I went early, recorder in pocket, folder under my arm. The conference room smelled like burnt coffee and vinyl flooring. Carl sat at the head of the folding table, tie perfectly centered. "We're here to discuss repeat non-compliance," he said, eyes fixed on me. "Some homeowners think rules are optional. I'm here for transparency," I replied, "and for my refund." He blinked. "Refund? For the $14 a month you've collected for a tennis court you don't own." I let the words hang. The county owns Parcel 12B since January 2022. I pulled the deed. He laughed. "You misunderstand. We have usage rights. Show me the recorded lease." He didn't. Instead, he shuffled papers until the treasurer, a woman named Denise, shifted uncomfortably. That's when Carl said, "Meeting adjourned." But the room didn't move. A neighbor whispered, "Is that true about the court?" Carl slammed the gavel, plastic, not wood, and barked, "Adjourned." I walked out without a word. In the parking lot, my friend Ron was waiting with his thermos. "That was fast," he said. "They blinked," I told him. "Now we start timing." He grinned. "You know, timing's admissible." 2 days later, the board sent an email. Special assessment notice, $350 for community beautification. No details. Payment due in 15 days. It was their move, but it looked desperate. Midweek, I visited county records. The clerk, a woman named Lillian with a soft voice and a collection of owl brooches, showed me the filing date. "They tried to record a retroactive easement last month," she said, "but it was rejected. Missing signatures." "Can I get a copy of that rejection notice?" "Of course." She printed it with a satisfying whir and the faint smell of toner. That rejection became Exhibit C in my binder. I knew I wasn't ready to go public yet. I wanted Carl to overplay his hand first. So I kept up appearances, mowed every 5 days, been inside by 5:59, porch light at regulation wattage, and still, citations kept arriving. Mailbox rust, garden hose visible, unapproved mulch color. They fined me $75 for leaving a ladder leaning against my own shed. That weekend, my neighbor and friend, Marcus Green, stopped by with a six-pack and a sigh. Marcus was retired Coast Guard, voice like gravel, heart like oak. "They hit me too," he said. "Said my flagpole's an unauthorized structure." "Flagpole?" "Yeah, my son's in the Navy." We sat on my porch, the Florida dusk heavy with humidity and quiet rage. "We could sue," Marcus said. "Not yet," I told him. "I want them comfortable. The bigger the net, the more fish we catch." Early the next morning, a letter slid under my door, anonymous again, printed in block font. "You're embarrassing the neighborhood. Leave it alone before you regret it." I stared at it for a full minute, then photographed it, envelope and all. Entry number 19. Later that week, Carl appeared on my property, camera in hand. Routine inspection, he claimed. I asked if he had written authorization. He said board authority was implied. That was his mistake. Knowledge nugget number 2. Under Florida statute, our 72.3035.5. HOA officers entering private property without consent commit trespass unless specifically authorized in the recorded covenants. I filed a trespass complaint that afternoon, case number 23, 142. Officer Ruiz came by, badge polished, tone neutral. "We'll make a note," he said, snapping photos. "You did the right thing, sir. Keep it documented." For once, I slept easy. If you've ever dealt with an HOA that behaves more like a private police force than a neighborhood committee, you probably know the feeling. Help. Less furious. A little ashamed you cared this much. Tell me in the comments if you've ever pushed back and what happened. Maybe someone else reading this needs that playbook. The next morning, Carl called a surprise compliance walk. I watched from my driveway as he and 2 others strolled house to house, clipboards ready, ignoring the ones with holiday lights out of season, stopping only at mine and Marcus's. It wasn't enforcement. It was performance. That night, Marcus texted me a photo. Carl's golf cart parked by the tennis courts, headlights off. The timestamp said 11:42 p.m. I didn't reply. I just noted it, printed it, and filed it under behavioral evidence surveillance. By then, my binder had reached 112 pages. On page 113, I wrote in pen, "Countdown begins, 30 days. Because I'd just learned something from Ron that turned all their power to dust. Ron slid a thin manila envelope across his desk, the kind that smells faintly of glue and dust. They incorporated under an outdated nonprofit statute, he said. Means they never refiled under the 2013 revision. If we can show operational misconduct under an expired charter, their entire enforcement authority collapses." I stared at him. "You mean they're technically not an HOA? "Legally they exist," he said, "but their powers, levying fines, liens, restrictions, those depend on an active corporate status. Right now, they're ghosts." It was almost too clean. The kind of mistake no one expects anyone to find because everyone assumes it's handled. We agreed to keep it quiet. My leverage file grew heavier. Inside, county parcel deed, rejected easement, expired corporate record. I labeled it Reversal Number 1, Silent Control. The next weekend, I invited Marcus and a few trusted neighbors over. We grilled burgers, played music soft enough to avoid any noise violation claims. By dusk, under the glow of my Porsche light, I told them what I'd found. "They're bluffing," I said. "Every fine, every threat. It's all paper without power. They never refiled." Marcus laughed, the kind of laugh that carries into humidity. "You're telling me we've been paying ghosts?" "Pretty much." We decided to wait 30 days. That's when they planned to finalize the $350 assessment. I wanted to catch them executing an illegal vote under a lapsed charter. Ron agreed to attend as proxy counsel to observe. In the meantime, I kept logging every harassment act like clockwork. Citation number 27, improperly stored hose. Op 28, lawn height inconsistent with community average. That last one made me smile. There's no community average in any code. Knowledge nugget number 3. Selective enforcement is legally void if the HOA fails to document identical violations community-wide. A single uneven standard cancels the fine. One evening, Marcus caught Carl photographing his house again. "Smile for the audit," Marcus called out, raising his phone. Carl muttered something about disrespecting the rules. Marcus told me later he could smell bourbon from 10 feet away. That same night, I got an email from anonymous neighbor at ProtonMail.com. Subject line, "You're right." Attached was a PDF of last quarter's bank summary, showing HOA funds transferred to Morton Landscaping, LLC. The signature? Carl Morton. Conflict of interest in full bloom. Ron nearly spilled his coffee when he saw it. "That's self-dealing," he said. "You keep this under wraps until the meeting. Let them certify the minutes. Then you drop the grenade." I saved it twice, printed one copy, sealed it in a red envelope labeled "To be opened only by neutral authority." Carl must have sensed something shifting. He started appearing on community boards more often, posting updates about malicious rumors and outside agitators. The irony was rich. He even tried charm. One morning he waved from his golf cart. "You're a numbers guy, right, David? You'd understand the need for fiscal discipline." "Sure," I said. "Numbers don't lie. People do." That night, I found my mailbox open, my letters scattered. No theft, just a message. So I bought a new lock and installed a discreet camera facing the street. A few nights later, the camera caught him again, Carl slowing down, squinting at my window, then driving off. The footage was crystal clear. If you've ever faced someone in authority who can't stand being seen, you'll know the satisfaction of watching their confidence crumble under a simple lens. Have you ever recorded an HOA or official trying to intimidate you? Drop a line. Tell me what happened. It helps more than you think. By week 3, I'd amassed 5 binders, color-coded by topic: enforcement, financial, property, legal, personal. Each had numbered tabs and sticky notes like flags in a battlefield. Marcus came by again, handed me a stack of printed emails someone slipped under his garage door. "Looks like they're panicking," he said. The emails showed Carl discussing ways to suspend voting rights for non-compliant homeowners, code for anyone who questioned him. That was a direct violation of Section 720.306(8). No HOA may suspend voting rights for fines exceeding 90 days unless all procedural appeals are exhausted. I highlighted the line, dated it, printed 3 copies. "Feels like we're building a case," Marcus said. "We're building history," I told him. The night before the big meeting, I cleaned the house, ironed my one good shirt, and placed Amanda's photo on the counter by the door. Her smile steadied me, the same smile that once made hospital rooms feel human. Then, out of habit, I whispered, "Tomorrow's for us." At 6:45 p.m. the next day, I walked into the HOA meeting hall. The air conditioning was too strong, the smell of plastic chairs mixed with old carpet glue. Residents filled every seat. Carl adjusted his tie and grinned like a man, certain of victory. He called the meeting to order, voice crisp. "Before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone that disruptions will not be tolerated." I raised my hand. "Point of order," I said calmly. "Before any votes, the board needs to confirm corporate status and quorum under Section 6(1) I have questions about both." The room went still. Carl frowned. "This is not the time." "It's exactly the time," I interrupted. "You're levying an assessment under an entity that ceased active status in March. I have documentation from the Division of Corporations." Murmurs rippled across the crowd. Marcus leaned forward, elbows on knees. Carl's jaw clenched. "You're mistaken, Mr. Lang." I opened the binder. "Then let's let the record decide." The fluorescent lights hummed like a low drumbeat as I laid the papers across the table. Each sheet had a yellow tab and a bold header: state record, tax receipt, rejection notice. Carl reached for the nearest one, then stopped. His hand trembled slightly, the manicured control cracking at the edges. "This is a misunderstanding," he said. "Our renewal was filed." I slid over the printed timestamp from the Division of Corporations website. Filed, yes, on April 11th, but the due date was March 1st, 41 days late. During that gap, every action you took, every fine, every vote, every threat was legally void. You could hear the air leave the room. Denise, the treasurer, rubbed her forehead. A few residents whispered. Someone coughed. Marcus muttered under his breath, "Dead HOA walking." Carl straightened, his voice rising. "You think paperwork makes you right? This community runs on respect and compliance." I looked him dead in the eye. "Respect doesn't come from fear. It comes from legitimacy." Ron cleared his throat. "As legal counsel present by invitation, I recommend pausing this meeting pending review of corporate status and fiduciary compliance. Any vote tonight could expose the board to personal liability." That last phrase, personal liability, landed like a ham. Carl opened his mouth, closed it again, and then forced a smile. "We'll reconvene next month." But I wasn't done. "Not yet," I said. "The members have the right to motion for a special audit under Section 720.303(5). I'm calling for one now." Hands shot up. More than 2/3 of the room. Supermajority. Motion carried. Carl's grin vanished. "You don't understand what you've started." "Oh, I do," I said, "and we're just getting to the part where sunlight hits the books." When the meeting adjourned, Carl stormed out first. The sound of his shoes on tile echoed like a threat. Ron exhaled slowly. "That was cleaner than I expected," he said. "But brace yourself. They'll retaliate." He was right. The next week I got 3 violation notices in a single envelope. One for faded house numbers, one for improper edging, and one for unkempt vegetation. I laughed out loud at that last one. My yard looked like a golf course. They even posted a community integrity alert on the bulletin board with my address blacked out, but everyone knew who it was. I printed a copy, filed it as Exhibit F. Then came the wellness check. 2 sheriff's deputies at my door saying someone reported a mental health concern. I invited them in, showed them my documentation. They apologized, told me to have a good evening. The report was anonymous, of course. Marcus found me later, sitting on the porch steps. "They're trying to break you, Dave." I shook my head. "They're teaching me how far they'll go. That's useful." He cracked open a soda, handed it to me. "Still think patience beats anger?" "Every time." That night, I watched the footage from my mailbox camera again. The grainy image of Carl's golf cart idling by the curb. My binder now had a new label: retaliation pattern. Knowledge nugget number 4. Under Florida's anti-harassment statute, SAR 784.048, repeated uninvited appearance can constitute stalking if intended to cause emotional distress. Documentation, times, dates, images, makes the difference between complaint and conviction. By week's end, half the neighborhood was talking. Some quietly slipped me notes of support. Others avoided eye contact. One woman, Mrs. Jensen from 2 doors down, whispered as she walked her dog, "We've wanted someone to stand up to him for years." I smiled. Then maybe it's time we stop whispering. If you're watching this and you've ever felt outnumbered by a board that forgot it works for you, tell me below. Would you fight back with evidence or just sell and leave? Either way, or at least like the video, because too many folks don't realize what rights they have until it's too late. The next morning, I mailed a certified letter to the county ombudsman's office requesting oversight for misuse of funds and harassment. The woman on the phone, calm and efficient, said, "We take patterns seriously, Mr. Lang. Expect contact within 30 days. 30 days. The same countdown I'd marked on page 113. Carl must have sensed the walls closing in. He called for another informal gathering, claiming it was just for clarification. I knew what that meant, damage control, but this time I was ready for the set piece. I prepped my documents, checked my recorder, legal again under one-party consent, and slipped Amanda's old fountain pen into my shirt pocket. It was her favorite, silver nib, black barrel, faint smell of ink and memory. Marcus offered to drive. "You sure you want to go alone?" "I won't be alone," I said. "I've got facts and an audience." The meeting was set for Friday, 7:00 p.m. The same day, the Ombudsman's office time-stamped my complaint, 6:52 p.m. I arrived just before the gavel dropped. The smell of burnt coffee hit first, then the faint tang of toner and sweat. The folding chairs were packed tighter than before. Neighbors who'd once kept their heads down now lined the walls. Carl tapped the gavel against the table like it could summon back his authority. "Before we begin," he said, "let's remember civility. Some people are spreading misinformation online." I kept my hands folded, binder in my lap, recorder light blinking red. "Transparency isn't misinformation," I said evenly. "And before you start, I filed a complaint with the state ombudsman. They'll be observing from this point forward." The ripple that ran through the room was pure voltage. Carl's face tightened. "That's not necessary," he said, voice pitching higher. "We can handle our own affairs." "Apparently not," I said. Denise whispered something to him, but he waved her off. "You don't speak for this community, Lang." "No," I said, standing. "I'm just the one who kept the receipts." The audience laughed, a quick, nervous sound, but it cracked the tension wide open. Carl slammed his gavel so hard the plastic split. "You are out of order!" Ron leaned forward from the back row. "Actually, he's exactly in order. Chapter 720 gives every member the right to speak before votes. We're still in open comment. The gavel fell silent. Carl sat down. That's when the retaliation turned meaner. 3 days after that meeting, I found my rear fence spray-painted with the word traitor. The security cam caught only a shadow. Tall, round shoulders, moving like someone who knew the path well. I filed the police report anyway. Case number 23-1298, photos attached. Marcus helped me scrub the paint, quiet and deliberate. You think it's him? Doesn't matter, I said. He's the one who made this normal. A week later, my water bill doubled. The utility tech came out, checked the meter, whistled. Someone's been running a bypass line here, he said. Looks new. Could that happen accidentally? He shook his head. Only with tools. I documented that too. Entry number 52. If you're following along, you know this moment. The low point, when the paper wins, but the body feels like it's losing. You start wondering if it's worth it. Tell me in the comments if you've ever hit that wall, when doing the right thing starts to feel like it's costing too much. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, Amanda's pen between my fingers, staring at the glow of my laptop screen. Somewhere between midnight and 2, I realized I was afraid. Not of losing, but of losing who I was before all this. Then I remembered what Marcus said. They can't make rules louder than truth. So I built a countdown spreadsheet. Rows for each violation, columns for false claim, non-enforceable, conflict, criminal. I watched the totals stack. 27 invalid, 4 fraudulent, 2 potentially criminal. And then, entry number 71, an email from a private Gmail account linked to a former board member. It was short. Check HOA insurance renewal. Denied. Lapsed 6/30. If true, it meant they'd been operating uninsured for 97 days. Every dollar they spent, every citation, every official act was now personal liability. Reversal number 1 was locked. They had no corporate standing, no insurance shield, and they were still pretending to govern. Ron confirmed it by morning. You could walk into that meeting and own them outright, he said. But don't. Not yet. Let them keep digging. Give the ombudsman time to show up. So I waited. I documented each day like a clock winding down. Harassment became farce. Anonymous flyers calling me a troublemaker appeared on mailboxes. My trash was tipped over 3 mornings in a row. Then Carl tried charm again, left a note taped to my door. Let's talk neighbor to neighbor. I didn't respond. Marcus did, though. He marched right to Carl's porch, pointed at the cameras, and said loud enough for half the street to hear, "We see you, and we're done being afraid." The next night, Carl filed his own harassment complaint, against me. Claimed I was surveilling board members. Officer Ruiz was assigned again. He reviewed my footage, flipped through the binder, and shook his head. "You're clean," he said. "He's overreaching. I'll file a note." The note mattered. It meant the first neutral authority had validated my evidence trail. The next would be the state ombudsman herself. By week's end, the notice came. A formal audit hearing scheduled for Friday 5 p.m., open to residents and press. Marcus slapped the letter against my palm. "Showtime," he said. I looked out the window. The streetlights reflected off the damp asphalt, the same stretch Amanda used to walk every evening. "For her," I whispered, and under my breath, quieter still. "For all of us." The hearing room smelled like metal chairs and nervous sweat. Folding tables lined one wall, and the state seal hung slightly crooked behind the podium. I got there early, binder in hand, shirt pressed, the silver pen clipped over my pocket like armor. Marcus took the seat beside me, his jaw set tight. Ron stood near the back with the ombudsman's aide, whispering in that steady way lawyers do when they know the facts are on their side. Carl walked in last. Navy blazer, red tie, expression flat. He scanned the room, counting allies. Only 3 board members had shown. The rest had found reasons to be elsewhere. At 5:07, Ombudsman Janet Hall called the room to order. Her voice was calm, practiced, but there was a pulse underneath, someone who'd sat through too many of these suburban wars. "We are here to review alleged non-compliance and misconduct by the Clearwater Oaks Homeowners Association," she said. "All proceedings are recorded. Anyone wishing to speak will do so under oath." Carl raised his hand first. "These accusations are exaggerated by a disgruntled homeowner who refuses to abide by community standards." Janet looked at him over her glasses. Then you'll have no problem producing your annual reports, insurance certificates, and meeting minutes for verification. He froze. I didn't bring those. Ron stepped forward. We I'd punich. He laid my binder on the table with a soft thud that seemed to echo. Janet flipped through the pages, fingers moving quickly. Expired corporate status confirmed. Insurance lapsed as of June 30th. Assessment vote taken without quorum. She looked up. Mr. Morton, are you aware that these actions expose each board member to personal liability under Chapter 7-220-303-2? Carl's face went pale. We've been advised it was minor clerical delay. By whom? Silence. Janet nodded slowly. Understood. Please sit. I didn't gloat. I just met his eyes and said, this is what accountability looks like. The hearing continued for 2 hours. Every document I'd logged found its place. Photos, timestamps, emails. Each one stacked until the board's story collapsed under its own paperwork. Visual beat number 1 hit when Janet took the expired certificate of status, stamped it in red ink, and said, void. The sound echoed like a gavel. The crowd shifted, whispers swelling into a low hum. Even the reporter from the Clearwater Times, who'd been silent all afternoon, started scribbling faster. Then Janet asked if I wanted to make a closing statement. I didn't plan to, but the words came anyway. We just wanted fairness, I said, not revenge. You can't run a community like a fiefdom and call it order. You can't weaponize rules meant for harmony. Carl tried to speak, but his voice cracked. We were keeping standards, he muttered. No, I said. You were keeping power. Afterward, people I barely knew shook my hand. One woman cried. Marcus clapped me on the shoulder hard enough to sting. When the room emptied, Janet stayed behind, stacking papers. You kept excellent records, she said. Most people just yell. Paper's quieter, I told her. She smiled. Quiet wins more often. If you've ever wondered whether documentation actually matters, if notes, dates, and photos can stand up to power, here's proof. It does. Keep everything. You might need it soon. Or than you think. By the weekend, the dominoes started falling. Carl resigned for personal reasons. Denise submitted a one-line statement citing health. 2 others followed within days. The insurer confirmed non-renewal for material misrepresentation. The county clerk opened an inquiry into misuse of HOA funds. Ron texted me a photo of the public notice with a single line. They blinked first. But I wasn't celebrating yet. I knew the real work would be what came next, turning collapse into reform. Because if you just burn a house down without rebuilding, you're only left with ashes. Marcus leaned against my fence that night, holding 2 beers. So, what's next, Captain Justice? He asked with a grin. I stared at the empty tennis courts under the floodlights, the same ones the HOA had never really owned. Now, I said, we buy the dirt under their lies. He blinked. You serious? Dead serious. County's auctioning Parcel 12B next week. Minimum bid's $25,000. If we own that land, we control access, parking, easements, everything they've used as leverage. We can rebuild the HOA from the ground up. Marcus laughed. Reversal number 1. Exactly, I said. We pooled funds, me, Marcus, and 3 other families tired of tyranny. By Thursday afternoon, we were the proud owners of Parcel 12B. I filed the deed myself. When the county clerk stamped it, the sound was sharp, final, like the click of a lock that had waited years to close. The next HOA meeting would be open mic, and this time, when I spoke, no one would be able to shut it down. The sun was dipping low when the next meeting began, gold light through the blinds, long shadows cutting across the folding tables. I walked in with Marcus at my side and the parcel deed in my briefcase, its embossed seal catching the light every time I moved. The air was thick with anticipation. People weren't whispering anymore. They were waiting for the break in the dam. Ron stood near the exit, arms crossed, scanning faces. Press is here, he murmured. So is the ombudsman's rep. Carl was gone, replaced by the interim chair, a woman named Phyllis who looked exhausted. This meeting is for public comment, she said, voice trembling slightly. Please keep remarks to 2 minutes. I waited until the 3rd speaker sat down. Then I stood. I'll try to be brief, I said, though I knew I wouldn't. For years, we've been told the HOA owns our amenities, governs our lives, and protects our property values. Tonight, I want to correct the record. I laid the folded document on the podium and opened it with deliberate care. This is the recorded deed for Parcel 12B, the tennis courts, dated last Thursday. It's in my name and 4 of your neighbors. We lawfully purchased it from the county for $25,000. A murmur swelled across the room. Phyllis blinked. That can't be right. The HOA hasn't owned it since 2022, I interrupted gently. They collected maintenance fees on property they didn't possess. That money, over $19,000, was taken under false pretenses. The ombudsman's rep stepped forward. May I see the deed? I handed it over. She inspected the seal, nodded, and said clearly into the microphone, "This is a valid transfer, recorded and verified. The HOA no longer holds claim or access rights to Parcel 12B." Gasps rippled through the hall. Marcus leaned back in his chair, arms folded, grinning like a man watching storm clouds break. Phyllis covered her mouth. "What does this mean?" "It means," I said, "you've been enforcing rules from land you didn't own. It means this board's authority has been rooted in a mistake. And it means we have a choice tonight. Fight over ashes or rebuild on truth." Someone started clapping, then another. Within seconds, half the room was on its feet. Carl wasn't there to watch it crumble, but his legacy was dissolving in real time. Ron leaned against the wall, scribbling not. "As for the paper, you just triggered the domino," he whispered. And sure enough, the fallout began within 48 hours. The local news ran the headline, "Clearwater HOA loses property rights after audit scandal." The insurer confirmed policy cancellation. A regional bank froze the HOA account pending investigation. The County Ethics Board opened a review of all board transactions under Morton Landscaping, LLC. By Tuesday, Phyllis called an emergency session, inviting residents to propose reforms. That's when I brought out the draft Marcus and I had been building for weeks, the Clearwater Charter for Community Fairness. It outlined term limits, transparent voting procedures, open meeting requirements, an independent ethics committee, and a mandatory quarterly publication of all budgets. It even included a rollback of 20% on all dues until proper oversight was reinstated. Phyllis read it silently, eyes glistening. "This is comprehensive." "It's honest," I said, "and it's what we traded for that leverage." Ron added, "If they sign this, they avoid civil exposure. Everyone walks out with clean hands except the ones who already soiled theirs." The vote was unanimous. Reform passed. Visual beat number 2 hit when the interim board signed the charter on the same podium Carl had once ruled from, using the silver pen Amanda had given me years ago. The ink gleamed wet under the lights, each stroke erasing months of intimidation. Outside, a light drizzle had started, soft Florida rain that smelled of warm pavement and quiet relief. Marcus stood beside me under the awning. "You realize you just rewrote how this neighborhood runs," he said. I shrugged, exhausted. "I just enforced the real rules." He chuckled. "Never thought a guy with spreadsheets could start a revolution." "Neither did I." "If you've made it this far, tell me, what's the first rule you'd rewrite if you were HOA suddenly had to listen? And what reform would actually make your neighborhood better? I'm curious how people across the country would handle their own small republics of power. By Friday morning, the Clearwater Times ran a follow-up story titled, "Citizen Oversight Restores Order in HOA Scandal." The opening photo showed me handing the signed charter to the ombudsman's aide under that flickering fluorescent light. Ron called it poetic. I called it closure. But I wasn't done yet. I had one more act, one that would make sure Amanda's promise to keep this place open would live beyond me. 2 weeks later, the Florida air turned softer, the kind that smells like salt and cut grass after rain. The neighborhood felt different. The golf cart patrols stopped. The notice boards came down. People lingered on sidewalks again, talking instead of whispering. For the first time in years, Clearwater Oaks looked like a community, not a jurisdiction. The county approved our new charter on October 3rd. I stood on the old tennis courts, the land we now owned, and watched the maintenance crew peel away the faded HOA property sign. Beneath the metal brackets, sunlight left a cleaner square, like the past had been lifted off. Marcus joined me, hands in his pockets. You gonna rename it? I nodded. Amanda Park. He smiled. Fitting. We held the dedication on a Sunday afternoon. Families came with lawn chairs, coolers, and kids who'd never seen these courts open. I gave a short speech. Nothing rehearsed, just truth. This started with a lawn notice and ended with a new beginning. What you see here isn't rebellion, it's repair. This land belongs to us again, because fairness isn't a privilege, it's a practice. Applause rolled across the crowd like a wave. I saw Mrs. Jensen crying quietly, holding her dog's leash in one hand and the new charter pamphlet in the other. Afterward, the Ombudsman's office released its final report. 3 former board members formally censured. Carl Morton charged with misdemeanor fraud and trespass, fined $4,000, placed on probation for 1 year. A consent decree requiring annual independent audits and term limits across all Florida HOAs affiliated with the same management company. The headline the next morning read, "Small Neighborhood Sparks Statewide Reform." I clipped the article and pinned it inside my binder, the one that had started this war. The pages had softened at the edges, corners bent, but it felt alive, like history you could touch. Visual beat number 3 came later that evening when I dropped the last remaining violation notice, unapproved lawn edging, into the fire pit behind my house. The paper curled, blackened, and vanished into ash. The sound was gentle, almost like rain. Ron stopped by a few days later with fresh coffee and a smirk. "You know, the state's using your case as training material now," he said. "Selective enforcement, fraudulent assessment, the whole playbook." "Good," I said. "Maybe the next guy won't have to bleed paperwork for justice." He raised his cup. "To Amanda Park. To open ground," I replied. The reforms worked faster than I expected. Within a month, every resident had access to financial ledgers online. Dues dropped from $142 to $112 per quarter. A new ethics committee formed, 3 homeowners and 1 retired judge. They called themselves the Porchlight Council. And just like that, people started planting again. Small gardens, porch flags, kid-made chalk drawings along the sidewalks. Freedom didn't look loud. It looked lived in. Sometimes I still walk the perimeter at night, the way I did back when I thought I was fighting alone. The crickets hum louder now. The air feels lighter. I pause by the oak tree Amanda loved and whisper, "We kept it open." If you believe I fought the right way and this is how it should end, say a few words in the comments for your friend. Subscribe so future stories reach you first. And if you know someone fighting their own version of this battle, share it, because every neighborhood deserves sunlight. That's on us. A week after the park dedication, I got a letter from the county clerk. Official notice of the new title registration. Parcel 12B, Amanda Park Community Trust. I slipped it into the binder's final sleeve, snapped the ring shut, and set it on the shelf. The label on the spine reads, "Case closed, Clearwater Oaks." Then I poured a cup of coffee, opened a fresh notebook, and wrote 3 words across the top of the first page. Next case, Palm Ridge.